Hello, my earthly delights friends. Before you pick up your trowel today, pause for one quiet second and listen to the soil beneath your feet. Have you noticed how a garden can calm the mind, steady the heart, and make life feel possible again? Maybe you grow herbs on a balcony, vegetables in a backyard, containers beside the porch, or you are turning tired ground into something alive. Whether you are a beginner worried about timing, a busy weekend grower, or a seasoned gardener still learning from the land, May has something important to teach you. May is the great turning point in the garden. Winter is losing its grip, the soil is warming, the nights are gentler, and the whole yard seems ready to burst into life. We are crossing from the cool patience of spring into the stronger heat of summer, and this short window matters. Plant the right crops now, and your garden can reward you for months. But planting in May is not only about food. It is about timing, roots, water, pests, companions, and the quiet wisdom of living soil. Every crop becomes a teacher. Tomatoes teach patience, beans teach generosity, corn teaches community, rye teaches resilience. Today we are exploring 11 of the best crops you should plant in May right now. What to grow, how to help each crop thrive, and why it belongs in a healthy, abundant garden. So grab your trowel, breathe in that spring air, and before we begin, subscribe to Earthly Delights for more practical, heart-filled garden wisdom. Now let's get our hands dirty. Section 1, Tomatoes. The solanaceous pillar. Crop number 1 is tomatoes, the true summer classic and one of the most rewarding crops you can place in warm May soil. But before you rush those young plants into the garden, tomatoes remind us of one essential rule: timing matters. Tomatoes are tender plants, and even one cold night can slow them down. They grow best when the soil has warmed to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15.5 degrees Celsius. If the ground is still cold and the night still feels sharp, the plant may survive, but it will not thrive. A healthy tomato needs warmth, steady light, and a strong beginning. When planting, choose strong seedlings and consider indeterminate varieties if you want vines that keep climbing and producing through the season. Give them support early because a tomato left unsupported becomes stressed, tangled, and easier for pests to attack. And this is where companion planting becomes so valuable. Basil near tomatoes can help confuse certain pests and may improve the growing environment around the plant. Marigolds nearby can also support the garden by discouraging some soil pests and attracting beneficial life. In the garden, tomatoes teach us that growth is easier when we are planted in the right season, in the right soil, and beside the right companions. Section 2, Peppers, the thermal specialists. Now, right beside the tomatoes, we come to crop number 2, peppers. Sweet bell peppers, jalapenos, chili peppers, and heat-loving varieties like Thai hot all belong to this warm season family. If tomatoes enjoy warmth, peppers truly crave it. Peppers grow best when the weather becomes steady and warm, especially when daytime temperatures sit around 75 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 24 to 32 degrees Celsius. They do not like cold soil, and they do not appreciate being rushed. Plant them too early, and they may sit still for weeks, looking alive but refusing to grow. But peppers also carry an interesting warning. Even though they love heat, their fruits can suffer from sun scald when the summer sun becomes too intense. A little afternoon shade, healthy leaf cover, and steady watering can make a big difference. For natural support, plant peppers near alliums, such as chives or onions. Their strong scent can help confuse certain pests and create a more balanced planting area. Peppers teach us that passion needs warmth, but even the strongest fire needs protection. Give them heat, give them care, and they will reward you with color, spice, and abundance. Section 3, Squash and Zucchini, the high biomass producers. From peppers, we move into crop number 3, squash and zucchini. This includes summer squash, crookneck squash, pumpkins, and butternut squash. Once the soil has warmed, these crops can often be sown directly into the garden, and they usually respond with powerful, fast growth. Squash plants are some of the great energy makers of the vegetable garden. Their large leaves spread wide, catching sunlight and covering the ground like a living mulch. This matters more than many beginners realize. When squash shades the soil, it helps reduce weeds, slows moisture loss, and keeps the root zone cooler during hot days. But with this vigorous growth comes a challenge. Squash can attract pests such as cucumber beetles and the damaging squash vine borer. One simple natural strategy is to plant radishes nearby, which may help discourage some of these pests and add diversity around the planting bed. You can also choose tougher varieties, such as Seminole pumpkin, especially if your garden struggles with heat, pests, or disease pressure. Squash and zucchini teach us not to be afraid of taking up space. They spread, they shade, they protect the soil beneath them. And they remind us that abundance often begins with strong roots and bold growth. Section 4, beans. The nitrogen fixers. Crop number 4 is beans. Bush beans, pole beans, and yard-long beans all belong beautifully in the May garden, especially once the soil has warmed enough for direct sowing. They are simple to plant, quick to grow, and generous when harvested at the right time. But beans offer far more than a bowl full of fresh pods. Beans are among the great givers of the garden. Through a living partnership with rhizobium bacteria in the soil, they can take nitrogen from the air and help fix it into the ground. In other words, while they grow, they are also improving the space around them, leaving the soil more useful for future crops. And that is why beans are such a meaningful plant to grow. They ask us a quiet question: are we only taking from the places we live, or are we also giving something back? For a steady harvest, sow a small new batch every 2 weeks instead of planting everything at once. This gives you a longer season of tender beans without one overwhelming harvest. And when picking, wait until the leaves are dry, because handling wet plants can spread disease. Beans teach patience, generosity, and the beauty of leaving the garden better than we found it. Section 5, cucumbers. The hydration staple. From beans, we move to crop number 5, cucumbers. Few things feel more refreshing in the heat of summer than a crisp cucumber picked straight from the vine. And in warm May soil, one small seed can become a vigorous plant, climbing, sprawling, and giving you basket after basket of cool green fruit. But cucumbers need watchful care. Their leaves can be vulnerable to powdery mildew, that pale white coating that slowly weakens the plant. They are also a favorite target of cucumber beetles, which can damage leaves, flowers, and young fruit before you even notice the problem growing. This is where the wisdom of companion planting helps us. Nasturtiums are a beautiful choice near cucumbers because they can work as a trap crop, drawing pests such as aphids and beetles away from your main crop. Their flowers also bring color and life into the bed. Cucumbers remind us that even fast-growing abundance needs protection. Sometimes the healthiest garden is not the one with no problems, but the one with smart boundaries, living diversity, and a grower who pays attention before small trouble becomes a harvest lost. Section 6, sweet corn, the wind-pollinated giant. Now we come to crop number 6, sweet corn. There is an old garden saying that when oak leaves are about the size of a squirrel's ear, the soil is ready for corn. Whether you follow that sign or simply check your local warmth, May is often the moment when corn can finally enter the ground. Corn teaches one of the most powerful lessons in the garden: it cannot succeed alone. Unlike many crops that depend on bees and insects, corn is pollinated by wind. If you plant one long, lonely row, the pollen may blow away before it reaches the silks, and the result can be poorly filled ears with missing kernels. That is why corn should be planted in blocks, not single rows. Standing close together, the plants catch and share pollen more successfully. They create abundance by growing in community. This wisdom is beautifully seen in the Three Sisters method, where corn, beans, and squash support one another. Corn gives the beans a living pole to climb. Beans help enrich the soil with nitrogen. Squash spreads across the ground, shading the soil and slowing weeds. Together, they show us that a strong garden is not built from isolated plants, but from relationships that help every crop rise. Section 7, melons, the thermophilic delicacies. After corn, we come to crop number 7, melons. Watermelons, cantaloupes, and honeydew are true lovers of heat. They do not want cool soil or weak sunlight. They need a long, warm season to build that deep sweetness we all dream about on a hot summer day. Melons are also wonderful teachers because they speak clearly when something is wrong. Their broad, water-filled leaves will droop quickly when the soil becomes too dry. In that way, they act like indicator plants, showing us the hidden condition of the garden before the damage becomes serious. And maybe that is something worth noticing in ourselves too. What are your own warning signs when you are tired, stressed, or running too low? Do you become impatient, quiet, distracted, or heavy in spirit? Melons remind us to respond before collapse. Water them deeply at the root zone, especially in the cool early morning, so the moisture can sink down where the roots need it most. Give them warmth, space, steady water, and patience, and they will turn sunlight into sweetness. Section 8. Root crops, carrots, and beets. Now let's move from the spreading vines above the soil to crop. Number 8. Root crops, especially carrots and beets. Many gardeners think of them as spring crops, but May can still be an important window for sowing a main crop that will mature later in summer or even into fall. Carrots ask for one thing above all: loose, deep, well-prepared soil. If their roots hit stones, hard clay, or compacted ground, they may twist, split, or fork into strange shapes. So before sowing, take time to loosen the bed, remove debris, and create a place where those roots can travel downward without resistance. Beets bring a different kind of generosity. Below the soil, they form sweet, earthy roots rich in minerals. Above the soil, they give tender leafy greens that can be harvested carefully while the root continues to grow. Root crops teach us to trust what we cannot see. For weeks, all we may notice is a small crown of leaves. But beneath the surface, quiet growth is happening every day. That hidden work matters. In the garden and in life, not every transformation announces itself loudly. To help protect carrots from carrot rust fly, grow them near onions, chives, or other alliums. Their strong scent can help mask the smell of carrots and confuse pests. Sometimes wisdom is not about fighting loudly. Sometimes it is about protecting what is tender by blending carefully into a living system. Section 9. Heat-resilient greens. Swiss chard. From the hidden world of roots, we return to the leaves with crop. Number 9. Heat-resilient greens, especially Swiss chard. As May becomes warmer, many cool-season greens begin to struggle. Lettuce and spinach may bolt, sending up flower stalks and turning bitter almost overnight. Their best season is passing, but that does not mean your garden has to give up on fresh, beautiful leaves. Swiss chard steps in right when other greens begin to fade. It handles heat far better than many spring salad crops, and because it is a biennial, it often keeps producing through its first summer instead of rushing straight to seed. Its colorful stems and wide leaves bring beauty as well as food. You can harvest the outer leaves again and again, allowing the center to keep growing. In hotter tropical conditions, gardeners can also consider edible leaf hibiscus or roselle as dependable leafy options. Swiss chard teaches one of the most useful lessons in gardening: adapt to the season you are actually in. When the weather changes, we cannot force every old crop to keep performing. We learn, we adjust, and we choose plants that can keep giving even when the heat rises. Section 10. Okra, the heat-resilient specialty. From the dependable leaves of Swiss chard, we move into crop number 10, okra. And if you garden where summers are hot, dry, and sometimes almost unforgiving, okra may become one of your most trusted crops. Okra belongs to the same plant family as hibiscus, and you can see that beauty in its flowers. Before the pods appear, the plant opens soft, elegant blooms that look almost ornamental. Then, day by day, those flowers become tender, green pods ready for the kitchen. What makes okra so valuable is its relationship with heat. Many vegetables slow down when the sun becomes harsh, but okra often begins to shine. It sends a strong taproot deep into the soil, reaching for moisture that shallow-rooted crops cannot touch. This is why good soil preparation still matters. Loose, living soil helps that root travel downward and gives the plant the strength to keep producing. Okra teaches resilience in a very practical way. When the surface is dry and stressful, it does not give up. It digs deeper. And sometimes that is exactly what the garden asks of us too. Build deeper strength, keep your roots steady, and let pressure become the heat that brings your blossoms forward. Section 11. Amaranth, the ultimate resiliency crop. And now we arrive at crop number 11, the grand finale of the May garden, amaranth. This is a plant many gardeners overlook, yet it may be one of the most useful and resilient crops you can grow when the weather becomes unpredictable. Amaranth is both beautiful and practical. Its young leaves can be harvested like a heat-tolerant spinach, especially when other greens begin to struggle. Later in the season, many varieties produce tall, dramatic plumes filled with tiny, protein-rich seeds. It feeds the eye, the soil, and the table. But the deeper value of amaranth is in the way it works with the garden. Below the surface, its roots help open compacted soil and reach into layers that other plants may not explore. As those roots grow and later break down, they help improve the structure of the bed. Above the soil, its bold flowers bring movement, color, and life, helping attract beneficial insects that support a healthier garden balance. Amaranth can grow tall, often reaching 6 to 8 feet, and in the right place it can act like a living windbreak for more delicate crops. It tolerates poor soil better than many vegetables, handles dry spells with surprising strength, and often self-seeds when allowed to complete its cycle. And that is the lesson of amaranth. It does not simply survive difficult conditions, it becomes useful inside them. It loosens hard ground, feeds future harvests, shelters weaker plants, and leaves something behind. In a changing climate and a changing world, amaranth asks us to be resilient, nourishing, and brave enough to stand tall. Conclusion and outro. My friends, as we step into the warmth of May and June, remember this. A garden is never just a patch of soil. It is a living classroom, and every crop you plant has something to teach. Tomatoes remind us to wait for the right conditions. Peppers teach us to love warmth but respect the need for protection. Squash shows us how abundance can shade and protect the soil. Beans give back through nitrogen and generosity. Cucumbers ask us to stay alert. Corn shows the power of community. Melons teach us to notice the first signs of thirst. Root crops remind us to trust the unseen. Swiss chard teaches adaptation. Okra teaches deep resilience. And amaranth shows us how to nourish the future. To help these crops survive the heat ahead, follow the golden rules of summer gardening. Water deeply at the root zone, especially in the cool early morning. Cover your soil with a 3 to 4 inch layer of organic mulch, such as straw, shredded leaves, bark, or composted material, to hold moisture and protect soil life. Keep observing. Look under leaves. Watch for pests. Notice when plants droop, yellow, stretch, or slow down. The best gardeners do not fight nature every day. They learn her patterns and work with them. Because when we understand timing, soil, roots, companions, water, and resilience, we harvest more than vegetables. We harvest patience, wisdom, and a better way to live. So tell me, what are you planting in your garden? And what are you planting in your life this May? Share it in the comments below. If this journey through the soil spoke to your heart, please like this video, share it with another garden lover, and subscribe to Earthly Delights. Until next time, keep your hands dirty, your heart open, and keep growing.